Hello, my name is Amaya, as you already know, and I read the book Beloved, written by a woman named Toni Morrison. Very good writer, very good book, very intriguing. And so, a brief summary of the book basically, it takes place after the Civil War, and it tells a story about a woman named Seeth, who is a former slave, and basically, it's her and her family, which consists of her daughter Denver and her mother-in-law named Baby Shugs. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If not, I'm very sorry. And basically, throughout the book, they are also joined by a man named a former slave named Paul D. And Paul D was actually held on the same plantation as Seed, and they have a whole like relationship and chemistry between each other throughout the book that actually goes on throughout the book. Yeah, and also there where they live in the house, it is haunted by a ghost named Beloved, which is actually the ghost of Seed's baby, which died. Baby died without a name, but on the tombstone above the grave, it reads Beloved, and since it's the ghost of the baby, they just call it Beloved. There's really not much explanation towards that, but eventually the ghost has like a bit of a love triangle between Paul D and Seed, and because the ghost tries to seduce Paul D, and see that's besides the point. But in the end, Paul D leaves, etc., etc., etc. But back to my critical lens, which was the ethnic lens. I read the book through an ethnic lens, and reading the book, the one thing that really jumped out at me was the portrayal of slavery and the portrayal of African Americans throughout the book. It was very different from how they kind of portrayed whites, but the main focus was on African Americans. So that's what I saw mainly throughout the book, and what I saw was mainly how slavery and the cruelty and the things that happened to them created a form of like PTSD, mainly in Paul D. He reflects a lot on his past and things that happened to him, and mainly, like in addition to that, like when he reflects, one thing that I picked up on was like how little African Americans had in that time. Of course, they didn't have their freedom, but the things that they did have were their names. In one scene, it depicts how Paul D is reflecting. And you recognize how the enunciation of letters in the name were memorized, and since African Americans didn't have that much back then in possessions, bracelets, clothes, even, but what they did have was their names, and them memorizing those names being theirs, and something that belonged to them. That was like how little they really had. Like the only thing they had was their names, and they were portrayed as that, and having very little. And that's something that I picked up, and I felt like was very linked to my critical lens because it was something specific to that race. See, white people, they have their clothes, they have different things, but African Americans, they have very little. They only have their names. And that was something that I saw that very connected very much to my lens. Another thing that I saw was like the portrayal of slavery, especially through Paul D's eyes, which went through a lot. It was one that depicted how they unhitched him from a wagon and they put shackles on him, they put chains on him, and it was very descriptive, and it really resonated with how the suffering and really depicted how what's happened in slavery, and it was one of those scenes that this is just you imagined it, and you kind of felt sad, you kind of felt like suffering. I mean, I felt that way. Might be different, and that was specific very much to African Americans, and you don't see any white person, Caucasian, that was being had chains slapped onto them. that was very specific to that race, and connected to the ethnic lens, because that's something that was very, let's say, very broad, and connected a lot towards that lens. That's something that I saw. But like overall, and like in conclusion, the whole book really comes in towards slavery, and the way it's portrayed and how it affected the people, the slaves, in like years to come afterwards, and how it affects like racism and all, and so on and so on and so on. But it really came down to slavery, and how it affected African Americans, and the very little things that they had, and so on and so on. But it was particular to African Americans, and that was the ethnicity in the ethnic lens. Anyways, thank you for listening.